You know what always starts my week on a high note? A mailbox full of good news. Sweet. We are back at the mailbox, friends, and we invite you to share all the good that's going on in your life. We certainly need it now more than ever. The email is good@verizon.com, and to get us started, a good news story about healing and silver linings. Lynn Graham from our consumer team in Arkansas wanted to share how she's connecting with her father, who's been in the hospital now for weeks. Visitors are still not allowed, but Lynn's thankful that Dad is wearing a Verizon CareSmart watch. It means talking to Dad is just one button away. So whether it's good news about Father's Day, about giving back, about all the ways we're truly moving forward together, send those stories to good@verizon.com. We want to share it with you right here on Up to Speed. Speaking of, I know we've got a show to start, and I've got some fan mail to read. Oh, probably not here yet. Bye.
Awesome, Andy. Thank you so much for that introduction today. Yeah, reminder, send all of your good things that are going on with photos or videos to good@verizon.com so we can share those with the world. I do appreciate that. And good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. 12:01 here on the East Coast as we're starting another week here of Up to Speed Live. Today, we'll have Joe Russo and Christy giving us an update on Phase 3 and where we are there. But before we get to that, I want to start with a photo. Michael, if you want to go and take that photo. A reminder that our response teams are out there in the field doing things as they always do, keeping our folks connected. This comes from the Sawtooth Fire out in Arizona. They were in place over the weekend, as well as tropical systems that are happening and impacting. Tomorrow, Kate J will be hosting a quick chat with AccuWeather chief hurricane expert at 2 on Verizon News Instagram, talking more about our preps into hurricane season. But remember, we are always there for our customers in their time of need. So I want to transition now over to Joe and Christy, who will be walking us through the updates today. Christy, starting with you, how are you?
Thanks, Jeremy. Great to be here with the V team. I'm great and have a lot of information to share today. So let me jump right in. And obviously the thrust of what we want to talk about is COVID, but I also wanted to start the week reminding us where we started our important dialogue last week. It was a very challenging and a very important week. And we recognize that many of our V-teamers are still reflecting on and mourning as we have George Floyd's funeral tomorrow. We want to make sure our employees know that if you feel that you need some time, your self-care is very important to us. We have resources available to help. And so please reach out to the HR team or your supervisor if you feel you need any assistance. I also want to thank everybody on behalf of myself and the rest of the Verizon Leadership Committee. We received so many feedback, emails, conversations, and so many of you engaged us in a dialogue, and your honesty and openness and sharing what needs to change both within and outside our walls has been very, very helpful. And we're working on making sure we can respond to all of the messages and ideas and thoughts that we received. And we want to make sure you keep sending those because your voice is so important to us. I want to also note that I had the honor last week of joining the BOLD Employee Resource Group members for a special installment of Courageous Conversations, which was the first of many. And in fact, we're going to do another one tomorrow night at 5. So please stay tuned for information on that if you'd like to join. Also Friday afternoon last week, we started another Courageous Conversation, and we had a guest speaker, Willie Jackson, who discussed how we could translate our allyship into real tangible actions. And we think that'll be one of many type discussions that we put there so that our Verizon employees, we can all be figuring out how do we constantly better ourselves and contribute to making the change in the world we'd like to see. We also held a number of self-care healing sessions with employees throughout the balance of the week, and we had over 200 employees join, and we're going to continue to host those going forward. And finally, there's a team planning for the Juneteenth celebration of the end of slavery in the United States. We're working on a number of initiatives, and we'll be back to let you know soon how you could take part in those. Finally, you also heard that we made the commitment to donate $10 million to 7 civil rights organizations. Rose Kirk and our public policy team have been taking action with those 7 organizations. The emphasis from those initiatives is really focused on economic empowerment through the lens of education, lifting up small businesses, job creation, civil engagement, allyship, criminal justice reform, and police reform. The other thing I want to leave everybody with this morning is that before we take action, we also know the first step is to listen and learn. And so the initial conversations we had last week were really helpful, and we continue to have them throughout this week, as I mentioned, because the VLC is wanting to put together a multifaceted strategy, building on everything we discussed and learned and talked about last week. We know there's going to be things that individuals can do, and we want to make sure that we're helping equip all the V-teamers so they know how they can take action or how they can get resources and support when they feel they need it. From a company perspective, we want to make sure that we're bringing to life inside the company the environment that we want so that all of our employees can advance and feel that they've got equity and inclusion in the workplace. And we want to be that best culture that we're bringing to life here at Verizon. And we want to also continue to provide thought leadership outside of our walls. And so we want to stay focused on areas where we've made a difference already, like criminal justice reform. And through the partnerships we've forged and the donations we've made, we think that'll give us more places to participate in the dialogue outside our walls. So when you combine the above, our goal is to create a chorus of voices of all 135,000 V-teamers that will help lead by example and push for change in our society so that all of the employees and the citizens in the communities around the world can be treated fairly and with equality and justice. So we will continue to talk with you about the way we're going to mobilize some teams and some activities on this over the course of the week. And we look forward to everybody participating in the dialogue with us. We've also updated the volunteer webpage. So if you're looking also for ways that you could personally take action, please stop there and check out some of the new opportunities that the team has curated. And again, more to come. So I'm going to shift gears and talk about return to office. We still are managing the COVID situation. We've moved through 3 phases of our crisis, but I want to remind our V-teamers, we've always been approaching this with the main focus on employee health and safety, and then our requirement of keeping our networks up and running so society can stay connected. We know so many people in the world are dependent on their connectivity to get their work done, to have their education for their children or for their families, or for other first responder and medical support and such. And we've really tried to have those guiding principles shape everything we've done here. And you could see that on this slide. And so now we're moving into phase 3. We started with the crisis with January to March. In phase 2, we had to take serious action and pivot to work from home and revise all of the ways of working for the services that we held in the field and in our store locations. And now we're embarking on phase 3. And we talked about this being from now until the end of September. And so what Joe and I want to do today is walk through phase 3 in more detail. And I'm going to tag team with Joe here. So I'm going to pass it over to Joe, who's going to give a bunch more information. I'll come off for some more information. We're going to both field some questions, and we look forward to making sure all the V-teamers know how we're proceeding into phase 3.
Thanks, Christy. Appreciate it. Glad to be here today. So let me talk about the various work groups around the business, and as we're moving through this phase 3, what that looks like for each of them. I'll start with our fabulous retail employees. They've been working in our stores and serving our customers in various ways throughout this pandemic. We continue to gradually reopen stores based on customer demand, and any open store will continue to adhere to our current touchless retail protocols like social distancing, one-on-one, and face coverings for both our employees and our customers. And as we continue to open more stores, V-teamers in retail will receive further instructions and timing from their managers. Until then, our retail colleagues who are not working in stores will continue to contribute to other business critical needs in their temporary assignments. I'll shift to our field technicians and engineers. As we have shared previously, we have extended our work from home and home garagings through June 30th, and we'll continue to evaluate our approach and communicate beyond that shortly. We are returning to performing work in customers' homes and businesses. That was a change we started earlier this month. That's working out very well. We've implemented a comprehensive series of customer checks to ensure the critical safety protocols like social distancing and face coverings are going to be followed, and making sure that our employees know they're entering a safe environment. We've also made additional face coverings, gloves, sanitizer, wipes, shoe coverings available for our technicians and engineers. Shift to a different group, our associates that work in call centers, operations centers, telesales. As we've communicated, we'll continue to work from home through June. And once again, we're evaluating that approach, and we'll communicate shortly for anything beyond the end of June. For our non-associate call centers, operations centers, and telesales, we've communicated that we'll continue to work from home through this phase 3, which means through September. Now, for our office-based employees, on June 1st, we started a small pilot group of employees to return to the workplace and join others who had already been working in the office due to the needs of their job. And we've been very pleased with that transition. First, I want to thank those V-teamers for following the new protocols, doing the screenings that we've been asking them to do, using our app, and providing their feedback to us so that we can improve and make sure we're prepared as we continue to scale and gradually reintroduce people to our workplaces. So here are some of the things we've learned in the first week. We got positive feedback about the building signage, and we'll talk more about that. And our on-site protocols were very well received. We are improving our return to office tools. We had some confusion with several of the questions to enhance that process and make it easier for folks. And some employees who needed to do the temperature screening reported that they did not have a thermometer. So we made available thermometers via our Verizon catalog, and they'll be available for all employees as you return to workplaces. Please continue to share with me and the team what we can do better and how we can improve. Christy, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Joe. So building on what Joe talked about, I'm going to talk a little bit about that middle group of employees who are normally based in offices. And for July 6th, we're going to begin the gradual reintroduction of office access. And we're implementing a rotating schedule that will start the week of July 6th. And it will designate specific groups that can utilize the office space during that time. And there will only be up to 25% of the offices utilized for now. So we want to highlight here the 5 things that you need to know before returning to the office. So as I just mentioned, we're going to have a phased approach, and it will gradually reintroduce access to Verizon offices based on a weekly rotating schedule. No more than 25% of employees will occupy any office at any given time so that we can adhere to the safety measures. We also want to remind everybody this is not mandatory. Every team is handling this process differently to accommodate and specifically address their type of work, but all of the employees that are typically based in offices will be assigned a group so that they understand whether they're in group A, B, C, or D. Later this week, the employees that are currently office-based will hear from their leaders from which group they're assigned to. We have randomly assigned the groups, so I don't want anybody to read anything into it. We went through leader level down in the organization and then randomly assigned group A, B, C, D. And then group A will have access to the office starting the week of July 6th. You could see that color-coded here in blue. Then the following week will be team B, C, D, and then we'll repeat the same for August and September. So everybody will have 3 weeks over these 3 months that they have the opportunity to access the office. We want to also note that there will be some of you for whom it does not make sense to come to the office, and that's perfectly okay, but it's really important that every employee understands what group they're in, if they typically work in an office, and know when they would be able to access it and what the protocols are. Now, most of our U.S. offices will be open July 6th. In other locations, especially in Europe, access will not begin until a later date, following some local information and consultation processes that we're still completing. We will let you know when your office has been enabled if it's not one of them that's available on July 6th, and then you and your team members will be able to pick up at that time and adhere to the group assignment schedule. Finally, on slide 7, I want to share, if you are a people leader, you'll have access to view your team's reports under your My Team section on About You. And this way you can see groups across your direct report team, and you can also export the list into a report. We know so many of our supervisors continue to want to make sure that their employees are safe and that they're good, they have their questions and such answered. So our leaders really wanted to make sure they knew how to support their teams as we move to this rotating environment. And they also know they can't be in every week with 100% of their team. So this is really more so that our supervisors can demonstrate the team care and support that they've expressed to us is so important to them. Joe, back to you.
Thanks, Christy. So as I mentioned before, with the pilot group in June, we started a return to office tool that employees could use for communication and to do some of the screening protocols we've put in place. For those employees that will be on this rotational schedule that Christy just mentioned starting in July, later this month we will communicate with those employees about the return to office tool. But not all groups will be involved. The Verizon media team will not be part of the deployment at this time, and will communicate directly to those groups later. Moving on to slide 8, let's talk a little bit about the on-site protocols in the buildings. We have said many times that the health and safety of our employees is our top priority, and that's why we have adopted a comprehensive series of on-site protocols and safety measures in the office. However, for these safety protocols to make a difference, we all must follow them, and we all play a role in keeping each other safe. So I ask for your support as you access one of our workplaces, that you follow the signs and monitor all of the communications. So to ensure that we foster that safe work environment, we've implemented the following things in our building. And we've gotten lots of questions about various things like the air conditioning systems and the plumbing systems. And the first thing I want to say is John Vasquez and his real estate team are the utmost professionals. They understand how to maintain buildings. They've been doing it all along. They have really kept our buildings in great shape, and they are preparing them before we open. They've cleaned and thoroughly disinfected all the workstations and common areas. We've instituted daily and weekly cleaning protocols. We've established hand sanitizer stations throughout the building. We've designed measures to control the flow of people. We've reorganized the placement of workstations and identified what workstations can be used. And we've put in place clear signage to maintain safe social distancing throughout the building. So on slide 9, some of the social distancing signage you could see here. These have been placed throughout the buildings to help manage traffic flow and make sure that we respect safe social distancing practices. Workstations will be marked as either available or unavailable so that we can maintain the 6 feet of social distance. High traffic areas such as elevators, entrances, restrooms, lobby areas are all also marked. The other thing we should talk about is facial coverings. So for, again, the employees who have been identified to use the rotational access, you will receive 5 washable face coverings directly shipped to your home, and you could use them if and when you enter the buildings or are moving around the buildings. Even if you don't anticipate needing to enter the office or you've been instructed that you don't need to, you will still receive these face coverings. You should also intend, when you enter the Verizon building, that you wear the facial coverings that we provide. If you don't need to wear a face covering, the only time is when you're sitting at your desk and you can strictly maintain a 6 feet of separation. Otherwise, we're asking that you maintain wearing the facial coverings throughout the building. Shifting a little bit to some office etiquette on slide 10. So even when you're in the office, at this time, we are asking that we really support everyone by having virtual meetings. My personal opinion is I feel like it's better if we're all virtual or all in person. So at this point where it's a mix, I would just strongly encourage you to use virtual meetings for those colleagues that may not feel comfortable being in a closed office space. Should you need to meet in a shared meeting space, the maximum occupancy of those rooms will be noted and there will be markers on the chairs. And for the common areas and facilities, while pantries are open and marked for the flow of traffic, other food, beverages, amenities, gyms will continue to remain closed at this time. But common areas will be marked, and some of the furniture we've rearranged to allow for safe social distancing practices. Christy, I'll turn it back to you to explain what everyone can do to be prepared.
Thanks, Joe. I think this is such a great way for us to talk about what's going to come, and really the success we're going to have about keeping everybody safe is, in addition to having good practices and protocols like Joe described, is really for us as V-teamers to really accept this as somewhat of a kind of an honor code among us about how we're going to behave when we're entering workplaces or how we're conducting business in all the other facets of our business. And so our first suggestion is please read and make sure you understand all communications. Second, we do have a training program that we'll ask employees to complete, and we want to make sure that you complete your mandatory training. If you're notified that you're on a rotating return to office schedule, there's a return to office tool that will ask you to register. We ask you to please register in the tool. Then when you're in the building, there's signage, as you saw on these pictures, but we'd also ask you to follow those. We also want to make sure you are willing to participate in helping clean and disinfect your work areas. We'll have supplies available, and if needed, with protocols, your participation in helping to do that is going to be really important. And then finally, like we've said from the very beginning, if you are experiencing any symptoms, please stay at home and alert your supervisor or your HR manager, because we want all of our employees to stay safe. And so Jeremy and Joe, these are a lot of information we've put forth here to describe in detail what the rotating process will look like on July 6th. And we know our employees have heard a lot from their other leaders for the other type of work groups that we have, such as retail. We talked with Krista last week. We've talked multiple times with Kevin Service and Gina Wilborn. We've talked with Nancy Clark and other leaders of our call centers. So we recognize today is pretty specific for the groups that will now start to return to the office. But we got some great feedback in the pulse surveys and told us people felt like they needed some more information and wanted to know what it would really look like. And so that's why we've gone into a little more detail here today. But employees will receive letters from the leaders of their operating units with a lot more specific information about how these overarching protocols for Verizon will apply in their work group. So Jeremy, I'll kick it back over to you for next part of the dialogue.
Good, Christy, Joe, thank you so much for all of the updates there, and a lot of I'm looking at a lot of comments here posted on Twitter, so we're going to send those over to folks to respond directly to them. But a couple of questions have come in right now that I want to go over. Starting with the current social climate, Christy, you opened up talking about that and some of the trainings and learnings. Do you think that will be a virtual unconscious bias training that folks will see? David wanted to know that.
Thank you, David. A couple of things I think we are working on, and again, we're in active dialogue with employees and people outside the company, inside the company, and leaders. We have unconscious bias training, so that's already available, and we're going to promote and highlight all the things we already have available that all employees can participate in. And then we're also going to newly launch. We're piloting it next week, and we'll take feedback from the employees in the pilot, and then seek to scale it. An ally training, so that can nicely complement unconscious bias, and then do training on allyship so people understand and feel safer taking an active participating role in advocating and helping have a voice for the change we all want to see.
Got it. Thank you for that. Christy and Joe, I'll put this one for you back for both small lab areas. Shannon wants to know, will there be any investment in expanding small lab areas where personnel cannot currently social distance from each other?
Christy, why don't I take that one? So there's lots of different scenarios like that. And what we're really doing is, number one, making sure that in those small lab areas, we're allowing only the number of people who can fit where we can maintain social distancing. That's our strategy at this point, and we'll see as things evolve if we need to potentially expand those lab areas, or if through additional safety protocols we can continue to reintroduce the entire population that used to use them. But at this point, if a lab area can only hold a couple people, that's all we'll be allowing in at that time, and we'll be monitoring the situation going forward.
Thank you, Joe. Christy, anything you want to add to that?
I think that's just a great example of how we have the overarching high-level principles of what we're trying to do throughout the whole program, and then each local leader and HR team will be able to then provide more guidance on how those apply to each of those circumstances. But we want the V-teamers to know that the principles and the values apply to our overall response.
Joe, one final question for you before we give Christy the floor to close us out for the day. I know you mentioned Verizon Media, that they're not a part of this at this time. Similar question about Verizon India and what they need to do and what they need to follow.
Yeah, it's a great question. The situation in India is certainly evolving and very different than here in the United States. The number of cases continues to rise there. New cases continues to rise. So at this point, we do not plan to reopen the facility on July 6th, but I would say stay tuned for that team, and Kalyani and other leaders will continue to keep the Verizon India team informed.
Awesome. Thanks for that answer there, Joe. So Christy, as we close this one out, final thoughts from you today, please.
We are heading into the next phase of the COVID crisis response, and we've moved from crisis to business as usual to this is really our new normal for a foreseeable couple of months here. And it's going to really rely on all of us as V-teamers pulling together so that when we put the protocols out, put the training out, that we all take the steps to do that. We're also wanting to make sure employees feel safe and feel comfortable. And one of the ways they're going to do that is if they know we're all in this together. So more training and communication as needed is available. And again, local leaders are going to be cascading communication throughout the week to their teams. And so much like everything else, Jeremy, we want to be open and transparent and give us your feedback. We listened. The Pulse feedback was super. And we really know by work team what people are concerned about, what questions they still have. And we're making sure that we're following up with local leaders and their employees. So we just want to continue to say thank you to all of our employees that have been part of bringing our response to life here for coronavirus. And regarding the circumstances in the world and all of the work that's happening in all of the communities and employees that have activated to stand up for equality and justice, we're going to continue the dialogue, and we'll have a conversation tomorrow night sponsored by Bold. And myself and a number of other leaders will be there, and we hope that there'll be many of you joining us, and it'll be a forward together, like the kind of change that we seek to see in the world. So that would be my closing remarks, Jeremy.
Awesome. Christy, Joe, thank you so much for joining us today. A lot of information covered there. So if you missed one of the answers or something, make sure you check out the replay. That's available instantly on Twitter, and then we will post it to InsideVerizon.com here later in the afternoon. Reminder that that website, the app, both on the street and VZ Web, a lot of resources there for you to use. So again, thanks to Joe and Christy. We'll be back with you again tomorrow at noon. Until next time, you're up to speed.